branding, right? Oh, okay. Right. Suddenly realized that there's this recording in progress. All right. So yeah, so these are actually my credentials. This is what I'm certified in. But not many people know that before I started my training journey, I also was from the health science faculty. So I did my optometry degree in UKM. And because of my background, most of the individuals or companies that I've trained thus far are from the healthcare industry. As you can see, the companies that I have here so far, there's hospitals, pharmacies, pharmaceutical companies, as well as different organizations, example like the Young Pharmacies Association, dental associations, and so on. Yeah, so I'm really excited to be able to share this with all of you here. Okay, now, here's a little bit of a trigger warning. I always believe in this. I feel that, you are responsible for your own learning. So all of you, you have, dedicated and given these 2 hours of your day to be here with me in this Zoom session. So, of course, everyone here, I'm going to treat you guys like adults. You are welcome to mute yourself and turn your videos off, of course, not a problem. But I would definitely hope and wish that you are with me, yeah, in this whole training, because you don't want to finish this whole 2 hours and feel like, what, I didn't really learn much because I was multitasking at the same time, right? So try your best not to do that. Hope that you are able to just make sure that you give me full attention. And I love people asking me questions, of course, questions related to the topic. Yeah, any personal questions are welcome. Yeah, but it's up to my discretion whether I want to answer that or not. Yeah, but so any questions related to personal branding, I would love to help you understand and discover that as well. Okay, all right. So what we're going to be doing for today, these are the three topics that you're going to be learning from, which is number one, we're going to understand the big why. Yeah, why is it so important to brand yourself, right? Why is executive presence so important? And then, of course, the second thing is how to start, right? What's the first thing to really think about, when you say that, what, I want to focus on my personal brand, what exactly should you be doing? And the third thing I always like to share is potential pitfalls, right? As you are branding yourself, what are the most common things that you might actually encounter, or what are some pitfalls that you may actually encounter as well, right? And these are all experiences that I've gathered, training and coaching different individuals. As I was sharing with her earlier on as well, many of my individual clients when I coach in personal branding are from the healthcare industries. I have a number of doctors that I coach as well, as a pharmacist, dentist as well. So I'm really excited to share with you what are some experiences I've had with them. Yeah. Right. So I guess everyone knows who this is. This is Jeff Bezos. And he did say this one quote, which I really, really do resonate with, which is, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. All right. So think about this in such a way, right? When you go out into the working world, or even right now in university, right? If someone were to ask your friends, your colleagues, your classmates, how is this person, right? How is so and so, right? The best way of understanding how strong your brand is, right, is how this person, how your colleague or your classmate is describing you. All right, because that's generally how people experience you, and that's genuinely how your brand is. Now that also means, right, if you do not proactively create or design your own personal brand, other people will be designing it for you. So it doesn't mean that, oh, today I decide, what, this year I don't want to focus on my personal brand, it's fine. It doesn't mean that your brand will not be it will not exist. It will still exist, but it's really, if you don't do it yourself, that means someone else is doing it for you, right? So that's really very powerful, I think, this quote. At the same time, it is also, I hope that it serves as a wake-up call to all of you here. Based on my experience of coaching and training individuals specifically in the healthcare industry, I'll tell you this: many of them would come to me in full regret, telling me that they regretted only focusing on their personal brand much later on. They felt that they could have done it much earlier, instead of doing it, when they are already of a certain level in the hospital, example. So that also goes to show, right, guys? There's no specific timeline that you need to think like, what, I only want to focus when I become a specialist, example. It doesn't work that way. In fact, to me, you want to focus on your personal brand, even right now, as early as right now. But here's the thing I want to also caution everyone here is that personal brand is very fluid. That means how you brand yourself right now as university students might not necessarily be the same as you go into different phases of your career. So it changes. Say, for example, when you come out and you are a houseman, you're a doctor, in your first few years, the way how you brand yourself should be different compared to when you brand yourself when you are a specialist, example, right? So all of these things are fluid and it's very dependent on the environment that you're in. That means, different stages of your career, different, circle of colleagues, example, different types of industry, right? So all of these things factor into how you brand yourself. All right. Now, one of the biggest, reasons why I oftentimes feel it's important to learn about personal branding is to do with this particular term here, which is unconscious bias. Now, if you don't know what unconscious bias is, it basically is, in a way, right, this subconscious stereotype or perception we have of other people that we don't know. So say, for example, when you're in a lift in a building, right, and in comes, different people into the lift, and you might not know them personally. A lot of times in our mind, subconsciously, we would already build a certain perception towards this person. All right, and so these stereotypes, many of the times, comes in either occupations or adjectives. That means, let's say a stranger walks into the lift, the first thing that you might have in your mind is like, oh man, looking at how this person is, I feel that this person seems to be a student or looks like a teacher, right? So now thinking about that, right? Why on earth would you think that that person's a student? Why on earth would you think that person's a teacher? All of this is because subconsciously in your mind, you've already programmed a particular stereotype attached to how this person brand themselves, right? Now, it's very interesting to see that unconscious bias, more than 60% of individuals make decisions based on gut feel. All right, that means, example, let's say you go for an internship program and there's 10 of you. And example, the doctor or the pharmacist, right, might not necessarily remember all of you. The chances of this doctor liking you sometimes might not be necessarily based on the level of substance you have, but is generally more of a chemistry. You've always heard people hearing people say the word chemistry. Now that has a lot to do with unconscious bias. It's just a gut feel. I just feel that, I get along with you better, therefore I like you better. So imagine this, more than 60% of individuals make decisions based on gut feel. That means an intuition that's formed based on past experiences or even how our belief system is molded. So that's one of the reasons why branding yourself, taking a proactive part of branding yourself, right, even as early as right now as students, is so important, because you have to not just factor in, other people branding it for you. You also need to factor in this particular important factor, which is unconscious bias, right? Now, how does unconscious bias impact personal brand? Yeah, like I mentioned just now, unconscious bias really, affects likability, how well people like you. So how you brand yourself is so important, so that, when you meet the right people, when you're in the environment that you're in your workplace in the future, you're able to generate that sort of likability based on your crowd, and you're able to combat unconscious biasness. Yeah, as I mentioned, 60%, that's really huge. I mean, think about it on your own as well, right? Like, imagine when in your first day of class, when you walk into the classroom, obviously you tend to gravitate towards a few of your other classmates compared to the others. Why is that so? It's because of the unconscious bias that you might actually have with different individuals in the classroom. So think about that example and amplify it in the workplace. Yeah. So there's different types of unconscious bias, that exist in this world, right? So for me, in the different list of biasness that you might actually encounter, or you yourself projecting, there's two that are very, very significant when it comes to personal brand. The first one is what we call affinity bias. Statistically, this is the most common one. What does this mean? This means people like people who help them like themselves or tend to be like themselves. That means you tend to hang out with individuals that are more similar in terms of perhaps outlook, background, principles, or even likes and dislikes. So that is what affinity bias means. The second type of unconscious bias that's very existing in this world is non-verbal bias, which is what I feel is the most avoidable bias. And this has a lot to do with body language. Sometimes, example, right, a very simple one, someone who is who likes dragging their feet when they're walking, right, is oftentimes perceived as being laid back or lazy. Now, that's not might not necessarily be true about that individual, but you feel that way because it is a non-verbal bias. That is why a lot of people focus much of their efforts in inculcating good body language, because sometimes just the way how you are without saying anything could already give off a very different perception to someone, right? So that's why, in this poster here, you see sometimes it's not what you say that matters, it's what you don't say. So that's why I feel that non-verbal bias is always the most the type of unconscious bias that is the most avoidable among all right. Okay, so when it comes to kickstarting your personal branding journey, these are the four important things that everyone needs to be mindful of. Number one is what we call perception positioning. Number two is reference point. Number three is how we create memorability. And the most important thing is how do you be consistent about things? Because here's the thing, right? I have seen many people try their best to, create a really, really impactful and amazing personal brand, only to fall short in being consistent. Now, the only biggest reason I see why people aren't able to be consistent in their personal brand is because the brand itself is not authentic. It's not truly you. You're imitating someone, or you're trying to be someone that you're not. And therefore, you find it exhausting as time goes by, and therefore you are not able to be consistent about it. Yeah, so consistency is very important in personal brand. That's why crafting your story to be authentically you is very, very important. Okay, now I encourage questions here, right, guys? So at any given point, if you aren't very sure what I'm saying, or you want me to slow down, or you want me to repeat anything, please drop your questions or your statements in the chat box. I'll be checking them from time to time. Yeah. If you're so far following me right now, don't mind to just get everyone to just give me a one. Can you just type in the chat box one if you're following me so far? Yeah. Okay. You know what? All of you are in the healthcare industry. You're in medical line, in health science, right? I'm going to assume everyone here are, you guys are smart, you guys are intelligent. I'm sure you guys can follow through, right? But yeah, again, in any case, you find it a little bit like confusing of any sorts, just let me know. Okay, right. So for me, so the thing is, right, for in terms of personal brand, it is a buzzword in 2021, right? In fact, there was this statistic that came out. What was the highest number of hashtag that you see in social media platforms, particularly in professional settings? Personal branding, hashtag personal branding was one of the most popular ones. But here's the thing, right? If you ask anyone about personal branding, chances are you might get different definitions, and that's not wrong, right? That's not wrong. I think different personal branding consultants or trainers like myself, we tend to define it very differently based on what our understanding is, right? But for me, I personally believe in looking at someone in a more holistic point of view, right? So this is how I define personal branding, and I think this is the better version, or this is supposed to be how you need to look at it as well. So it's really easy to remember. Just remember the abbreviations ABC. All right. So what does ABC stand for? Maybe before I show this, perhaps I want to get everyone to try in the chat box. What do you think ABC stands for when it comes to personal brand? Anyone wants to try? What do you think ABC stands for? What is the ABCs of personal branding? Anyone wants to just try? Give it a try and see. Or maybe, you know what, let me do it a bit easier for you. Let me show you what's the first one first. So the A in ABC is appearance. So how you look, right? How you package yourself is actually pretty important when it comes to personal branding. I mean, some people might tell me like, you know what, it's not important, whatever. My substance is more important than how I look. True, your substance is important, but you need to always understand that your substance needs to match your perception. That means how you look needs to be in a way representing of what you are internally, so that when people first see you in the first impression, they're able to immediately understand who you are and what you do. All right. So the A in ABC is appearance. All right. So we've got that. Now, share with me, guys, in the chat box, what do you think B and C stands for? Just a wild guess. Yeah. What do you think B and C stands for? Anyone wants to try? What do you think B and C stands for? Wow, nice. Wenny and N says behavior and character. Very, very good, very good try. So B is behavior. Spot on, all right? B is behavior, right? So you guys got B correct. N says C is character. Okay, that's a good try, but not entirely true. Yes, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name. I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing your name right. Joy Shika, right? Let me know if that's a correct pronunciation. Yeah. So Joshika says communication. Spot on. Okay. C stands for communication. So this is the ABCs of personal branding: appearance, behavior, and communication. Now, it doesn't just stop here, in my opinion. For me, you need to practice these ABCs both offline and online. Okay, so what does this mean? Offline basically means, when someone sees you face to face, physically, in real life, right? You need to actually have your ABCs consistently present, right? But more so, your online branding. That means how you are on, example, social media, whichever social media platforms that you choose, be it Facebook, Instagram, or even LinkedIn, right? You need to make sure that how you are offline and how you are online is similar, if not the same. That means the feel, the vibe, the brand positioning, the brand identity of you in real life and you online has to be very similar. Okay, because let me share with you this. I mean, I do interview many fresh graduates for my company as well, right? And I would tell you that most of them would have a really amazing online presence. That means when I check them out, when I scout them out on LinkedIn, they look amazing, right? But when I see them face to face for an interview, I sometimes might get not pleasantly surprised. Yeah, that means it just becomes so the disparity is so big that it is actually pretty detrimental to their brand, because online is so amazing and then offline is like, whoa, what, I almost did not recognize this is the same person, right? So that's why making sure that these two elements are consistent, if not the same, is so, so important. Now, the most common question I get when it comes to these ABCs is which one is most important, right? And the answer is all are equally important, but when it comes to helping an individual discover their personal branding journey, I often start with the A factor first, the appearance part, all right? Because that's always very related to first impressions. Now, speaking of first impressions, I always like to ask this question: how long does it take to build, not to say to build, right? How long does it take for people to have a first impression towards you? How long does it take for people to have a first impression? 6 seconds. Great. Okay, that's a good one. Any other takers? How long does it take? Imagine yourself when you see someone for the very first time. I mean, it's the same thing here, right? I mean, I can't see you guys, but you guys can see me on the video as well. So how long did it take for you to immediately have an impression towards me? Okay, just a second. All right, wow. Just one swipe and then you get that first impression. All right. So the statistically correct number is 7, all right? But I would say, of course, it ranges from 5 to 8 seconds, thereabouts, right? That means, you see, it's just a few seconds, 5 to 8 seconds, just so short. Sometimes you might not even have an opportunity to say anything or do anything, and people already form an impression of you. So that's how unfair sometimes society is, right? That's why when people say don't judge a book by its cover, I oftentimes feel that, unfortunately, people do, right? People do judge a book by its cover. Yeah. And right now, due to the pandemic, We see supply being more than demand when it comes to, in the workforce. This situation, right? People judging a book by its cover becomes even more prominent. Yeah. So that's why I always start with appearance. Then I move into behavior, which is, helping the individual inculcate different sort of skill sets in terms of interpersonal skills. How do you interact, build rapport with individuals? And then the third one is communication skills. That means making sure the way how you communicate, bringing across a point. How eloquent do you speak? Do you have like stage charisma? And when I say stage charisma, guys, it doesn't mean that you only need to have stage charisma when you're on stage. Yeah, stage charisma basically means like how well can you hold the room, yeah? When you speak. Do people pay attention to you? Things like that. All of these are included in the communication skill sets as well, right? So this is how I see personal branding. Okay, it is not just online, but offline, how people see you as well. All right. Now, in terms of your personal branding journey, okay, this is the 4 steps that I always see, how the journey would actually be for every individual. So it always starts with first impression. Just now, as we mentioned, it takes about 5 to 8 seconds to build a first impression, right? Then the second thing is people start building a perception towards you. And perception basically means likability. Okay, this means, right, first impression in that first few seconds when they see you, they're like, okay, they have a very quick impression to you, right? It's either positive or negative, right? Then the second point is that now that they start being able to communicate with you, do they like you or not? What's your likability level like? That's to do with perception, right? Now the third thing is that, okay, they like you, they don't like you, that's perception, but can they remember you? Okay, so that speaks about unique brand, because a lot of people stop at perception. They feel that, okay, as long as I'm able to build likability, people like me, I think that's good enough. But in today's world, where you are, all of you, amazing, intelligent individuals, you guys are surrounded by equally intelligent and amazing individuals as well, right? You're surrounded by a sea of talents, lah. That's what it is, right? So how do you then stand out? That's where we talk about unique brand, right? Now, unique brand has to be authentically you, because that is important to help you be consistent. Because if it is not you, if you're trying to put up a facade that is, basically not something you're comfortable with, but you feel that this is important, then you're not being able to be consistent, and you are also going to burn out very quickly. So that's why the journey needs to be as such. So as I mentioned, the first thing we always focus on is the appearance. Next, we go into behavioral development, which is building rapport internally with your colleagues, externally with your patients and customers. And then the third one is, how do you communicate? How do you, have crowd control? How do you hold the room so that when you speak, there's so much weight that people turn to pay attention to you. All right. And the last one is, of course, making sure that how you portray yourself in the online platform is very similar to how you are in your offline settings. All right. Okay. So here's the first mini exercise I have, or rather, something for everyone to reflect here. I'm curious to know, what is the personal branding myth you have heard of? First things first, maybe I want to just check. You guys can just put in the chat box either Y or N, Y for yes and for no. Have you guys heard of the term personal branding before? If you have, please put Y. Have you guys heard of the term personal branding before? Before this talk with me, have you heard of it before? Oh, okay, interesting. Some say no, some say yes. Okay, great. All right. So even if you have heard of it or you have not heard of it, now that we're in the first few slides of this session, tell me, perhaps those of you who have heard of it before, heard of personal branding, what's the most common type of myth or, definition or misconception or anything to do with personal branding? When you hear personal branding, what's the one thing that comes to your mind? Okay. And those that have never heard of personal branding before, same thing as well. What's something that, that comes to your mind right now when you come into this training, or when your school was promoting this talk and you saw executive presence and personal branding, what was the one thing that you had in your mind? What did you think about? Anyone wants to share in the chat box? What's the one misconception that you have heard of when it comes to personal branding? While you guys are typing in the chat box, let me share with you what's the most common one I hear from example, fresh grads or even university students. Many of them tell me that they feel that personal branding should be only something that needs to be developed if you want to be famous. Has anyone heard of that before? They tell me that, if you want to be popular, if you want to be like a KOL, a key opinion leader, an influencer, that's the only time you need to focus on your personal brand. If you are just going to be, working for someone, you want to be, in just, in the healthcare industry, just being, working in the hospital, that's not something you need to focus on. Has anyone heard of something like this before? If you have, give me a thumbs up. Yeah, if you have heard of something like this before, give me a thumbs up. Has anyone heard of that before? That you only focus on your personal brand if you want to be popular. Okay, I do see only one person putting the thumbs up. Okay, great. What other misconceptions? Myth, you need personal branding to be famous in your own field as KOL. Yeah, okay. So that's a very common thing, right? A lot of people tell me, you only focus on personal brand if you want to be popular. Mm, is it true? Is it really a myth? I would say yes and no. Of course, a lot of people that come to me, for me to coach them on their personal brand, obviously, they would want to be seen as thought leaders in their industry, right? Having said that, I think for me personally, personal branding is very, very important for career development. It's actually in terms of your career progression. That's really what personal branding is really, really important for, right? Because as I shared again and again with everyone, right, you have to always remember that this is the reality here, right? You're not the only institution that has doctors, pharmacies, dentists, etc., right? You're not the only one. There's a lot of other universities and colleges that, whether it's locally or overseas, that produces people of the same academic background as you. So every year there's so many of you that are coming into the workforce. How then can you stand out? That is a question that you have to constantly ask yourself. How then can you stand out? Now, speaking of standing out, right, I want to just put it out there right now that standing out has nothing to do with your personality being outgoing or not. Because this is the next myth that a lot of people tell me. They're like, you know what? I'm very introverted. I don't really like the limelight. I don't really need to be, in the center stage. I'm cool with that. Therefore, I don't think I need to really focus on my personal brand. That's very that assumption is very incorrect. In fact, being outgoing or introverted has nothing to do with your personal brand. Why? Because standing out does not mean you need to be the loudest in the room. Okay, standing out does not mean you need to be the loudest in the room. Standing out basically means that, after example, being in the room together, let's say it's a meeting, right? Being in a room with other people, standing out basically means that when people leave that room, they remember who you are. That's basically what standing out is. Okay, so it's not to do with like being outgoing or being introverted, nothing to do with that. It's nothing to do with being famous or not. Okay, it's just purely about understanding how to be memorable. Now, if you tell me that, hey, my personality memang is like this, a lot of people tell me that I'm the class clown. That's why I like to crack jokes. I'm always the loudest. Does it mean right now I have to tone down? No, if that's really your personality, go all out, right? It's fine. But if that's not your personality, the good news is you don't have to be that. Okay, because a lot of people tell me that, hey, in order to stand out, do I need to be very talkative? Do I need to crack jokes? Do I need to be really loud in the class? No, you don't have to. Okay, you don't have to. You need to really understand how to leverage and play with your own strength into making sure that you stand out very elegantly and subtly. Okay, that's really the key here. Any other myth that anyone here has heard of? Anything else that anyone has heard of? Anyone? Going once, going twice? Okay, the next one I've usually heard of is relating to the definition of personal branding. A lot of people tell me that personal branding equates to social media. That means personal branding means how you brand yourself online. Is it true? As I showed you in the previous slide, partially true, right? It is in some ways how you brand yourself online, but it is also a lot of times how you brand yourself offline. Okay, remember, both of it has to be consistently similar. Okay, now speaking of that, right, I think one of the things that I would love for everyone to do after this class, please don't do it now, yeah, because I don't want you to get distracted, is um, the first step, right, when you want to brand yourself is you need to understand your status quo, correct? Status quo means how is your brand right now? Do you know? Yeah, right. That means, right, if I were to ask your classmates about you, do you know what they would say? Okay, so the best way to understand this status quo, which is really, really important, yeah, guys, is number one, Google yourselves. Okay, I want to ask everyone in the chat box here. Has anyone here Googled themselves? Please put why if you have and if you have not. Have you ever Googled yourself? Yes? Okay. So I do see it's a mix, yeah. Some say yes, some say no. Okay. So I want everyone, right, to Google yourselves after this class. That gives you a baseline of what other people are seeing you online. Okay. Just look at the first page would do. All right. So look at the first page. When you Google your name, when you insert your name and you click, in Google itself, what is the first page that comes out? What are some of the things? Is it your Facebook? Is it your Twitter, your Instagram, or maybe your blog, right? Make sure you understand what exactly are people looking at, because in future when you go out to the workforce, Googling or stalking potential candidates is something a lot of hiring managers or employers do right now. Yeah, a lot of people do that. All right. So you need to understand, right? When people Google your name, right, what's the first thing that comes out and what are they actually looking at? Okay. Just to share with you, when I first came out to the workforce, it's of course many, many moons ago. All right. But of course, during that time, we already had Google. Yeah. I'm not that old. Yeah. But when I Googled myself, what I realized was that a blog came out, right? And this was a blog that I had when I was in high school, basically emo phase, you're writing about like your life, your day, it's total trash, but that came out on the first page, right? So that got me realizing that, oh my gosh, if a potential hiring manager were to see that, that's the first impression they have of me. Okay, so guys, do yourselves a favor after this class, Google yourself, okay, and see what you see in the first page, and at least you know exactly what to do moving forward. Okay, now let's go into the first few things. Now that we have understand what personal branding is, what is it, why is it important, we've got all the basics covered. Now let's move into creating your brand story, your personal brand story. All right, so the first thing that I always ask people to do is identify a reference point. Okay, reference point means someone that you look up to and aspire to be. Who is that? And why? Why do you aspire to be like this person? Write down 3 key observations that you have of this person. So always remember this very important quote: emulate, don't imitate. Okay, emulate, don't imitate. Emulate means you're just using this person as a reference. Okay, you see there are some key qualities of this person and you aspire to be them. That's emulate. Imitate means you totally follow bulat-bulat, to the point this person has this haircut, also you cut. This person has this hair color, also you color it. That's imitation already, and we don't want that, because you and that person that you respect or admire are totally two different individuals. You can never be that person, and that person can never be you. And if you imitate fully, trust me, you're gonna go into a burnout, because it's so tiring being someone that you're not. So here, I just want you to think about someone that you look up to, someone you aspire to be like. Why? And write down 3 key observations of this person in terms of their strength. That means, why do you aspire to be like this person? Okay. So of course, here you can see the pictures I put is all celebrities or business figures, right? But the person that you look up to or aspire need not be a celebrity. It could be even someone in your university, perhaps your lecturer, perhaps your faculty dean, perhaps a doctor or a pharmacist, someone who's a thought leader in your industry, that could be perfectly fine as well, as long as you have reasons why you look up to them. All right. So I'm going to give everybody about 3 to 5 minutes here. Of course, I understand that you might not be able to write down the list so fast, but at least think of one person right now. Okay, because this is very important in creating your brand. This sets a backbone into your brand story. Okay, think of that person and at least just write down one reason why. One reason why you like this person so much. One reason why you aspire to be this person. Okay, I'm gonna give everyone about 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, and to make this a little bit more fun, what I want to do right now is I'm actually going to put everybody into breakout rooms, very random breakout rooms. Okay, so that everyone here, you guys can kind of like discuss among your group members, share with your group members who is someone that you aspire to be like. And then later on, just to make this a little bit more purposeful, I'm going to randomly call out someone to share who is that person that you look up to. Okay. All right. So I'm going to create a breakout room. Just put you guys in there for 5 minutes, share with someone in your group who you look up to and why. Okay, and then I will close the breakout room in around 2:55. Okay, all right, see you guys in a bit. The next thing here, now by the way guys, whatever that we have gone through this exercise, bear in mind that today is a 2-hour session. Of course, you might not be able to write down anything very thoroughly, but what I would really want to encourage everyone to do is that after this call, please take some time to think about these questions, because these are the questions that I ask exactly. These are the exact questions that I ask my clients when I coach them in their personal branding journey. Okay, so these are some things that I'm sharing with you as well. Please take some time to think about it. Now, if at all after these 2 hours, because I have a sense that many of you are shy, maybe camera shy or maybe Zoom shy, to share or to ask questions. What I would love to offer everyone here is that, if after this and you start answering all these questions and you have questions about how to go about this, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and ask me via message. I'll be happy to help. All right. Okay. The second question that I want everyone to think about is to identify people you potentially would be working with. Now, of course, right now, as all of you are still in university, obviously you guys are not in the working world yet, but I would highly suggest for everyone to start having some sort of idea where you want to be at. Because even if you are taking medicine, obviously there is different specializations, different sectors. Some of you perhaps prefer NGOs, some of you love the private hospital settings, some of you in fact want to go out of it. Maybe you want to, example, be in pharmaceutical. Like where I was from, I used to work for Alcon, right, which was used to be a subsidiary of Novartis. We had medical liaisons who were doctors, right? So if that is something that you aspire to be in, you have to start understanding the people around that you would potentially be working with. Because remember just now in the unconscious bias part, affinity bias. People like people who are like themselves. I repeat, people like people who are like themselves. So part of your personal branding story has to also involve people you work with. Okay, so now I want everyone to start writing down. If you have a piece of paper or a notebook that you have been writing down from the first point just now, continue on this second question. Think about potentially, and we're thinking about aspiration, right? Your dream, your vision, right? Where do you want to work in? Be very specific. It's a private, if you can even name the hospital, even better. All right, think about all these things that you have, and then what I want you to imagine is the people, the colleagues, the staffs that you'll be working together with. Identify them based on these 4 traits. First thing is what occupation they would be in. Now, you might say like, oh, duh, it would be, of course, doctors or people in the healthcare faculty, right? Not necessarily, right? If you choose to be in corporate, if you choose to be in pharmaceutical, Your colleagues or people you work with might not necessarily be of a health science or medical degree, right? They might not be, right? So think about this person or this group of individuals that you would potentially be working with. What industry, what occupation, what is their age like, what's their level of education, and what's the first thing that would come to your mind about them. Okay, so example, let's say you think about like going into corporate, right? So think about like what's the first thing that would come into your mind when you think about colleagues, people that are in corporate. Maybe they are a little bit more structured. They are a lot more put together. They are more strategic. Yeah, whatever that comes to your mind first, put it down. Okay, so same thing, guys. I'm gonna give you guys about 5 minutes or so to think about this. Okay, you can take a picture if you want to. Okay, this is what we call individual avatar, AVATAR. So when we think about personal brand, we need to think about your surrounding as well. So in your case, right, guys and girls, think about people that you potentially would be working with and identify them, classify them based on these 4 criteria. It's very important because get this, right? Even example, age. If the people that you potentially be working with are much older, then the way you might want to project yourself should be very different compared to if, let's say, the people that you want to work with are way younger. Okay, right? So important to visualize all this information. Again, imagine where you ideally would like to work in and categorize the people that you'll be working with based on these 4 criteria. Same thing, guys. I'm going to break you guys into breakout rooms just so that you guys can have a bit of discussion on this. And of course, just be very, just write down simple points. Again, I understand in 5 to 10 minutes, it's really hard to think about all these things in detail, but just put down as much as you can. Okay, so I'm going to put you guys back into your breakout rooms to discuss this. Okay, and I'll see you guys in 5 minutes time. All right. If you have any questions that you're not you don't understand the activity, you're not sure what to do, please raise your hand from the breakout room and I will come over. All right, see you guys in 5 minutes. To the third thing, which is very important. Okay, now that you have a reference point, you've also understand the people that you work together with. The third thing, right, is to understand what is your elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is basically how someone would summarize you in 1 to 2 sentences. So example, like me, right? If let's say someone were to ask my colleagues or my staffs, okay, what is Renuka like? My personal brand elevator pitch would be how my staffs or my colleagues summarize me in 1 to 2 sentences. All right. So I am a what? I'm what kind of a person? All right. So now, essentially, what I'm trying to do here is I want to get everyone here to have an opportunity to create and write your own elevator pitch, right? Of course, what it means is someone describing you, but here right now, putting yourself in someone else's shoe, how do you want someone to describe you? What's the elevator pitch? What's your personal branding elevator pitch that you want people to have of you? Okay, think about it. I want you to just think about it. Take about 2 to 3 minutes to write something down. I'm not going to put you guys into groups anymore. This is more of a personal discovery, right? Write something down, and I'm going to call out at least 3 people to share with me. Okay. As you share with me, I'm able to give you a little bit of suggestions and opinions to maybe improve it further. All right. So take about 2 to 3 minutes. Write this down. What is your personal brand elevator pitch? Okay, take about 3 to 5 minutes, and then I would randomly call out 3 people to just share. Also write down in the chat box if you're not clear about this small activity. And if you're absolutely uncomfortable, asking in public or, making it known that you're unsure of things, please be mindful that, I'm sure, and all of you know that in the chat box, you have an option of sending me a private message. You can do that as well if that makes you feel more comfortable. All right.